how about we jump right into it, fam? Overall, what did you think about this week? In Nicaragua.
Yeah, I mean it was really cool to be in Nicaragua, see everybody, all our friends, and the anti-imperialist contingent, which is pretty much also divided on a lot of issues, but they did come together when it comes to Nicaragua. um, and just being there with all kinds of people and that really see a lot of the same problems, that have been traveling to these countries in Latin America, and really see the results of U.S. sanctions and the effects they have on them. And just being there and seeing people that I don't see every day was really nice, and celebrating with the people of Nicaragua the the win against U.S. hegemony, against the U.S. backed Somoza dictatorship that really plagued them, and even before that, the intervention and interference of the United States directly. And every time Danielle Ortega talks, it's a history lesson, and so it was definitely a ginormous history lesson that we got to really hear. And this is why you need to learn Spanish, fam, because they did. I think it was our friend Camilla shared the translation in English of what the president said, but it is a history lesson. He talked about so many things, including the issue with Colombia regarding their ports, and just so many things in reference to the overthrowing of the Somoza and the U.S. involvement, and all that. I thought it was really good seeing all of that and seeing all the people. And one of the things that I am reminded of about Nicaragua that other countries could learn from is their food sovereignty, the abundance that they have of food. It's incredible. They are not going hungry in Nicaragua, and you can't really say the same about other countries in like Cuba or Venezuela or other countries that have really dared to oppose the United States. So that is something that people could learn from.
Yeah. I was telling everybody while you got cut off there, I have a little video I'm making, kind of like that Anthony Bourdain style, where I'm doing some narration over it and showing some of the food. But before Fee got there, I was able to visit a farm, and it's this group called the ATC, which got these awesome subsidies from the government to stay in these areas and actually grow food. But where they're at right now is truly amazing, because they're growing all this food, and they're not using any of the pesticides, the harmful pesticides that are found in our foods. They're non-GMO vegetables. They're using all these natural ways, and it was just truly amazing. Pataya, which is like a dragon fruit out there, is one of the cash crops they've kind of gone to, because it grows much more rapid, much more faster than the pineapple. They still have a lot of pineapple out there, but I got some awesome footage up there where I got they're making their own coffee. They were saying they were trying to find a way where they had everything they made up in the mountains and up in the farms that they were out, of these kind of farms where they're at. And they've even started making their wine. And fam got to have some of that pineapple wine, which tastes like a pineapple sour. It was so friggin' awesome, fam. I got to have some the last day. I drank rum and pineapple wine, and it is just truly amazing. Non-GMO food. This is something I talked about. What is more important, getting healthcare for all immediately in the United States, or kicking out Monsanto? You know what I'm saying? And I don't think one is even more important than the other. I think they're both very important. But the mindset of how we grow our food and what's going on with our food in the United States nowadays needs to be taken into factors. And I just love what Nicaragua's doing. I mean, like fam said, they could feed themselves. We went to the market, right, fam? How much food? It's all over the place. There's an overabundance of food there. And I got a lot of respect for the Sandinistas and the government and everything they've done. They were even making trips to Bloomfield, where they were driving across the country to these other parts of from one part of the country to the other, from the Pacific side to the Atlantic side. It's truly amazing. And just heartwarming what's going on in Nicaragua. One of my favorite countries, fam.
Yeah. And I think on that Medicare for all question or healthcare question, I think healthcare won uh, on your poll, did it not?
By a little.
I don't remember.
But
Yeah.
it won 54% to 46. I was surprised that ending Monsanto got that close. I really did. I was very surprised.
Yeah. I mean, I think both are important. But I do think the immediate relief people would feel for not being, burdened by a cancer diagnosis or the diabetes diagnosis or any diagnosis where you rely on medication heavily is something that can't be ignored also, even in spite of all the problems that obviously our government and our healthcare system has. I think it's hard to say that that's not something that would help people immediately. In fact, but in the long run, obviously, the fact that our food is so unhealthy in the United States is obviously a huge issue. So,
Yeah. Yeah. My eczema felt better going there. You can see, guys, it's like it's still there, but it's getting so much better from eating just clean, limpio food. It was amazing. Should we get into the first article, fam? Because I think that our friend Lauren Smith did an amazing job. This article was translated into Spanish by the vice president's office and distributed out to everybody. And I think it's a really good article. Should we jump into it?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So from Covert Magazine, our good friend Lauren Smith. Nicaraguans celebrate the 44th anniversary of the Sandinistas revolution. And that's how close we got to Daniel Ortega right there. I can smell his breath, fam, as he said, Yankee, go home. It was amazing. Let's just jump right into it. Under stewardship of original revolutionary leader Daniel Ortega, Nicaragua remains a beacon for social progress despite crushing U.S. sanctions. In the United States, the word socialism has come to have a negative meaning. In that meaning, the word implies the loss of individual sovereignty, the rejection of religion, and the institution of authoritarian political measures. While denounced as socialist by the U.S. propagandists and repeated by ill-informed media, in fact, Nicaragua has a mixed economy based upon traditional humane Christian spiritual beliefs under the concept of Sandinismo. It also encourages multiple political parties in line with genuinely social democratic ideals. The foreign media denounced the Ortega administration for its alleged oppression, though, in reality, the people who have suffered at its hands are individuals and groups who have repeatedly taken part in U.S. regime change violence against Nicaragua's government, people, and public institution. Keep in mind that in the U.S., domestic terrorism is also unlawful. And fam, this is the picture right there of the young Sandinistas that we saw around us, that after the speech was finally over, that when they were moving him to the car, a lot of the Sandinistas formed lines together like a chain to protect their leader. Anything to say so far? It's a short article, but if you have anything to say, please jump right in.
Yeah, I think Nicaragua. Um, I think there's pretty much very. I wouldn't say there's any country that has full on socialism or definitely not communism, because the capitalist system forces people to participate in it or get left behind. China learned that early on. They could have a structure that is government, a government structure that is under the Communist Party of China, but they're clearly actively participating in the economy, which is obviously a capitalist one. So I think that that's definitely correct in terms of Nicaragua. However, their ideals, their ideology is under the banner of socialism. They have said it as much. Now, what that means to Nicaragua versus what that means to the United States is entirely different. As Lauren mentioned, Nicaragua is largely a Christian country. It is a country that really supports religion, is really conservative in terms of social issues, no on marijuana, no on drugs, more than 50% no on abortion. So there is this is definitely not the same type of socialist that you would say exists in the Western European and North American countries where their number one issues right now is pronouns and just more identity politics related things. And I think that's also part because they haven't had to face sanctions, they haven't had to face things that the people of Nicaragua have faced, and that is something that really propelled them to fight against the system because they had no choice. They needed to eat, they needed to have infrastructure, so those are the things they focused on. And so I think the differentiation, I think, is by and large different when we talk about socialism in Nicaragua versus that in the United States. And another thing is also with the COVID situation, Nicaragua did not shut down the government, which is really funny coming from some people who live there and who were, calling us the Ku Klux Klan for being against mandates and being against government shutdowns because we knew it would affect the large majority of the poor and working class people. So it's kind of weird how a lot of these Western faux socialists ignore the policies of countries that are left progressive or left leaning, whether it's Nicaragua, whether it's Mexico, and others. So I just wanted to point that out as well.
Yep. And the way this article is written, it's obviously written so a lot of conservatives can understand what's going on. Talking about these Christian values, because you got a guy, and we're going to make a law, fam, that keeps God-hating communists and socialists out of our country. And by the way,
China.
Right? So it's like he doesn't know. He doesn't understand. You got to go down there. And it's just, I hate that, and I'm not an over-religious person. I keep, peeking in on Christianity and Catholicism here and there. I went to church with my mom yesterday, and it was a good homily, fam. It was like, wow, I definitely am spiritual. But I mean, the fact that a lot of people in the United States think that socialists and communists are anti-God, anti-religious. It's like they need to get off their asses and go down to these countries and see and go pray. Go hold hands and pray with some Sandinistas before you eat dinner, because it's just false when they put that narrative out there. On July 19th, 1979, and fam, we didn't get to the 1979 bar, the Sandinistas People Revolution Party, the Frente Sandinista de Liberación Nacional, overcame the U.S.-installed puppet dictator dynasty headed by the Somoza family. Below is a photo of the U.S. tank taken by the FSLN that hangs in the former torture facility and prison run by Somoza's death squads in the city of Leon. And you can see the pictures there, fam. It's kind of disturbing and it's messed up. And I like the newspaper shot with all the people there. Not that I'm happy that anybody died. When I say I like it, I like the fact that the feeling you get when you go to these countries, go down to the next picture real quick there. They honor these people. There's the torture center. You can see all the stuff they put up, what they did to these people. They were taught by the CIA, fam. So they were taught by the best torturers in the world. And then the next picture over here. When you die and you fight for, liberty and freedom, and you fight for the peasants and the poor people, and you fight for the Sandino way, because you'll hear them mention Sandino all the time. He was there, led the first peasant revolution of sorts. They honor you. They thank you for what you've done. You know what I'm saying? They don't leave you behind. And I just think it's always awesome the way that they honor their fallen soldiers who, fought for Nicaragua's independence. And then, of course, the next picture of Sandino, he's right there as well. And he died in 1934 at the hands of the CIA and the Somozas. They killed him. Let's read the next part of it right down below. The Sandinista government accepted the election results of 1990 to end the violence caused by the CIA-organized Contras. They ceded control to the opposition party funded by the U.S. And fam, last time we were here in Nicaragua for that election, we had people tell us how fraudulent that election was, how much it was cheated, how they were just burning up ballots from Sandinistas and supporters, and that they rightfully probably won that election. but they stepped down and ceded power because they didn't want the violence to continue on until they can come back and get it later on. So let's continue to read. Subsequent right-wing governments ruled Nicaragua from 1990 to 2007, after which the FSLN returned to office upon winning the 2006 election. The FSLN went on to achieve sustained economic and social progress from until 2017 and was lauded by the World Bank and International Monetary Fund. After the failed 2018 U.S. coup, it became embarrassing for U.S.-funded non-governmental human rights organizations, also otherwise known as NGOs, and the international banks to sing Nicaragua's praises. Sandinismo, under President Daniel Ortega and Vice President Rosario Murillo, and the FSLN simply means caring for all of the society members by providing the necessary infrastructure to ensure an educated, healthy, and economically viable society and a prosperous population and fair elections. A 2022 survey conducted by M&R Consultants confirmed that 70% of Nicaraguans believed its government was leading the country in the right direction. In pitiful contrast, a recent poll found that 71% of Americans believe their country is headed in the wrong direction. The pollsters admitted that they had never seen the level of sustained pessimism in the 30-year-plus history of the poll. President Ortega embraces the concept of good government in the tradition of former U.S. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Under FDR, economic relief for the Great Depression involved reforms in industry, agriculture, finance, water power, labor, and housing. Today, many of FDR's accomplishments have been rolled back, either through willful negligence or by federal regulatory agencies being captured by industry and or censorship. Even funds set aside for Social Security, as explained by Max Blumenthal of the Gray Zone Project in his address to the UN Security Council, are now being funneled into covert warfare. It seems that the only times funds are found are for military-industrial complex or other mega complexes. What has emerged in the United States is corporate socialism managed by investment funds such as BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, and bailouts in trillions of dollars to New York Federal Reserve dealer banks that serve the 0.001% of the population. Most U.S. residents and citizens experience a pull yourself up by your bootstraps form of capitalism, a physical action that is impossible to accomplish, or suffer from declining social indicators such as life expectancy and declining birth rates. The U.S. dollar is no longer supported by gold or industry and is now losing its value as a transactional currency. The SWIFT banking system and petrodollar are being replaced by alternate Chinese, Russian, and BRICS transactional systems as defense against the illegal and unilateral U.S. economic sanctions and outright theft and privacy. To make matters worse, profits are extracted from the once great U.S. economy and deposited in overseas accounts. Thus, working capital is no longer working through reinvestment. But that does not stop the Fed's printing of dollars. Eventually, inflation will make the 1970s stagflation look like a walk in the park, fam.
So, there's a lot in there. 100%. The United States is going backwards. And in spite of the fact that these countries come from, and I said it about Russia, I'll say it about Nicaragua, they come from having dealt with sanctions, having dealt with the fall and failure of governments and dictatorships. They are moving towards progress, even if they're starting out with less. We are moving backward. And that's not an exaggeration. And again, I just saw that in the United States. I see it every single day versus what Russia's doing, what China's doing. Despite of the fact that people may not like China's government or whatever, despite of the fact that people may think of Nicaragua's government, and it's not Nicaragua, Managua in particular. It's not the prettiest city in the world in terms of this sort of touristic paradise, but it's fully functioning in terms of providing for its citizens, which is the most important thing. And I think like in the US, you have aesthetics, but the aesthetics are also being depleted because things aren't being fixed. They're not progressing.
Yeah. It's they're moving in the right direction. We're moving in the wrong direction. I think you said it perfectly there, fam. I mean, I think it's also a great explanation about what that type of like kind of socialism is. A lot of people think that socialism is just nothing but overreaching control, the loss of your personal sovereignty, and a loss of your civil liberties and your voice. But that's just not the case. And, you know, this is kind of like that market socialism of sorts. It's still socialism, you know, right? But it's market socialism is the way I like to describe it, because there are free markets there. There are individual businesses. There's home ownership. There's private businesses. We went to those markets and those people own their businesses. So people have to get rid of this mindset that it's everything controlled by the government and look at a great example of a country like Nicaragua. And the reason why they're so supported, that particular government, is they've given their citizens things that are actually tangible that they can use: infrastructure, finances, healthcare. And I'm not talking about the bullshit healthcare. I'm talking about the real healthcare, guys. Not a sick care system, a healthcare system. And that's the difference between what we got going on in the United States.
Okay. And I think
that's
you guys should go check
article.
out that. Yeah. You guys should go check out that article at covertactionmagazine.com.
I'll put the link in the chats right now.
Okay. And then we have a Twitter video I put up from Saskatchewan News. If you can play that, that would be great. And we're just going to go through some of the things we saw on that day quickly, because I know we're kind of taking our time with this. But does he have the video?
Cheese slice. The next clip, cheese slice.
It's not a video; it's an article.
This sorry, yeah, that one's an article.
You want to just bring it up?
Yeah, if you can just bring it up, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, my bad. That one's an article. The videos are after. Right. So one of the key guests of this inauguration was Burkina Faso's prime minister. And we're not going to go through everything he said, but they talked largely about what's going on in Burkina Faso and about Thomas Sankara, who obviously was a fighter in the same vein of socialist tendencies. And they talked about what he represented for Africa and for Burkina Faso, and also he was honored by Nicaragua. And Daniel Ortega did a whole thing on it. And Burkina Faso, of course, is one of the countries that has recently, if you guys have watched RT's coverage and others, perhaps Africa Stream especially, talking about ousting the colonial powers from Burkina Faso. And also today, I believe it was earlier, Vladimir Putin made a statement on the eve of the Africa-Russia summit. And he said that Africa is going to take its place in a new democratic multipolar world, freeing itself from the bitter legacy of colonialism. And the Africa-Russia summit will happen in St. Petersburg. So what you're seeing here is a movement towards reliance and more cooperative relationships between Latin America, Africa, and the East, including China and Russia. There was representatives from China, I believe, and Russia as well there, and Belarus as well. So there was a lot of presence from the eastern part of the world, from the global south, in Nicaragua's celebration of the 4419. And I think it's important to point that out, because Nicaragua is a country that is one of the axis of resistance against U.S. hegemony, along the three most radical ones that we would consider: Cuba and Venezuela in Latin America. Those are the three that were always excluded from the summit of the Democracy Summit of the Americas by Joe Biden last year. And those are the three that are constantly vilified, blocked, sanctioned, you named it. So it's very important that Nicaragua continues being that. So
Mm-hmm.
And then I think after that we have your tweet, Pasta.
Yeah. That's a good for that one cheese slice. Yeah, I mean, I wish I could understand. They didn't give us the pieces for the translation. You know, when President Ortega was speaking, I can grasp a lot of it and understand where he's coming from because he talks so slow and he's very methodical and whatnot. But when that gentleman from Burkina Faso was speaking, I couldn't grab anything that was going on. I kept on asking you, fam, what are they saying? What's going on over there? I did put up a tweet. Go right ahead. And there's just a video. You can put that video up really quick. I said moved, touched, and inspired because every single time I'm there, I just get so touched and inspired. It's like the opposite of what goes on in the United States. I went to a political event not too long ago. It was Kerry Lake event. Took my mom, and I was the youngest one in the room. And it seems like only senior citizens get involved in politics in the United States. Well, in Nicaragua, it's the opposite. The youth that are involved, the young people that are involved, the love they have for what their government has done to give them independence over the empire. Here's a little picture, and I just put moved, touched, and inspired.
The youth, as you said, is more involved in Nicaragua, and that's true. In the U.S., the youth is involved in some aspects, but they're usually involved in ways to manipulate things for the Democratic Party or for the Republican Party, not in ways where they genuinely are excited about a candidate. The most excitement we saw, obviously, in recent times was with Bernie Sanders, and that obviously was nothing more than a sheep herding into the Democratic Party, which, again, of course, we're going to discuss is playing out again. And I think, but this the youth mostly is weaponized by, especially the Democratic Party, with these like faux progressive ideals. But you never hear candidates get excited like this about Joe Biden. People get excited like this about Joe Biden, about, singing songs about Joe Biden. We've talked about this before. There are songs about Nicaragua's fight. There are songs about, and these are songs about, putting up resistance, actual resistance against U.S. hegemony. These are songs that talk about, stay out of our affairs. And they talk about the United States. They talk about, Western interference, and they do it in a very like happy, lighthearted, singing and dancing Latin type of way, but they're still saying "fuck you" to the Western interference. So it's really interesting to see how they deal with this through song and dance. I think it's one of the most beautiful things about Nicaragua.
Yeah, I seeing everybody dance was pretty awesome too, as well. You know what I'm saying? It was just a magical moment, and it always is and stuff. And like I said, when he was leaving and they were forming that kind of like human fence, it's touching. It's so touching, and I am very, I'm so excited to see what Nicaragua holds for the future. Fam, I think this is his last term. And pretty soon, I know not right now, but in a couple years, maybe a year and two, we're going to start getting into, well, who's going to be the next potential president and leader of that country? And that's going to be the question, because so much could be lost, right? If, in fact, the Somoza style, what's the other family, Chamorro family, get back into power. Like, if that happens, so much can be lost. That neoliberal disaster government, if they get back in power, all could be lost from everything that was built in Nicaragua. And I am just excited for their future. They built that road all the way across the country. It's amazing. And like I said, the food, I can't wait to release my video. It's going to take some time, guys, because I'm not a great editor, and I started working on it, but I got some great footage, and I was able to show some great stuff over there, and I'm excited to show you guys when we get it done.
And just my tweet was basically what Pasta saw. You can just play it and I'll talk over it. So if you want to lower the volume down, it was just basically young Sandinistas excited for the arrival of Daniel Ortega and the beginning of the July 19th celebration. This is, of course, as we mentioned, the 44th celebration. And I said, you don't see this excitement with a U.S. president, especially Joe Biden right now. So you're not going to see anybody excited about Joe Biden. But you do see that love for Daniel Ortega. And we were so close to to Daniel Ortega and Rosario, and we were very thankful for being there. And we saw them, celebrating and talking about how happy they were that they are able to be Nicaragua is standing together, Nicaragua united, resisting the U.S. hegemony. This is decades long, of course, resistance against the United States and NATO countries in general. But this is, of course, with continued sanctions by the U.S. and vilifying them. Of course, you hear everything about how they're awful, the Catholic priests, how their elections are a sham, how he's a dictator. The same thing you hear about Assad, the same thing you hear about Putin. You should start, realizing usually these things are just not true. If the U.S. frames it in this way, it's simply people wanting to have their own national sovereignty and their own say in how to handle their own affairs. So, that was just... it was nice being there and being so close and seeing that energy.
Fam, we went to the Honduras election after Nicaragua. It was a pretty decent election. I think the way everything was in place is pretty awesome. There's a little tweaks they needed to make, I think, to make it a little bit better. But all in all, I think it was great. And I did ask Manuel Zelaya when we got a chance to meet him when we went to the Libre Party's office. And I asked them, I said, well, the United States government decided to coup you just like that. What makes you think they won't do the same to your wife, Xiomara, if she gets into office? Somewhat of a political kind of answer, but I mean, what was he going to say to me? What would have been the right answer? I don't know. But it looks like the more that places like Honduras, places like Colombia try to progress further in their national sovereignty, they'll get more pushback from the empire, fam.
Yeah, but I think this pivot was going to go one way or the other. It was either going to go with Xiomara going more towards the west and trying to placate to them, or it was going to go more towards the other direction. And with the rise of China and the rise of multipolarity that we're seeing, also with the pushback of Russia and the entirety of Africa, and you can even add there the Saudi Arabia's re-enhanced cooperation with Iran and Syria, you're seeing a clear trend towards a different way of working with people. And so I think that was a boost needed for Xiomara, who we were told when we were there in Honduras was far more radical than Manuel Zelaya in terms of her political positions. And she is actually proving that to us now in the latest CELAC EU summit, where Zelensky was rejected from coming on by a lot of these countries. Xiomara said that they were against the assets held by the West from the Venezuelan people and said that they should be returned. And they want to normalize the barriers in trade that prevent them from having a relationship with sister countries like Nicaragua. That's a very bold statement to make when Honduras has been couped, when Honduras has had U.S. military bases, when Honduras is, has been suffering under the consequences of a U.S.-backed government. So she's clearly showing her true colors on this, and that's something good, I think, for Central America, because I think quickly they're realizing that this relationship with each other as well as China is going to be beneficial to the region. Why would they more so rely on the United States when they can rely on each other.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And it seems like no matter what, they'll always try to put a wedge there. The United States will always try to pin one government against each other, but I don't think it's going to work. And it's weird because I think Camilla said it best. We're talking about Kasachwa News. Camilla said it best that, and I'm going to start using this terminology right now. It's not bases inside these Latin American countries. It's an occupation. It's an occupation. Plain and fucking simple. The United States is occupying these territories in Latin America, and they need to get the hell out.
So I don't know if he showed the tweet that I was talking about.
Sweet cheese slice.
So, yeah. So that's basically what I said, and she has a video of it, but there's several videos. So we'll show the next video, but I just wanted to make sure you guys saw that. If you haven't checked it out, go to Kasachwa News on Twitter and be sure to show that one. And on the next tweet, it's going to also be, I believe this one is, let's see. I think this one's mine. Oh no, yeah, this is a different tweet. This is the one where she's calling out the Washington groups, and we can go ahead and play this video, and then we'll talk about it.
El golpe de estado militar que derrocó al presidente Zelaya el 28 de junio del 2009 desencadenó la más terrible e injusta persecución continental a nuestros líderes. Lula da Silva, Rafael Correa, Dilma Rousseff, Cristina Kirchner, Evo Morales, entre otros, así como pérdidas de vidas inocentes, asesinados y torturados. Mi gobierno sufre sabotajes diarios, una feroz campaña mediática, incluso un lobby de los grupos más reaccionarios de Washington. Se renuevan las amenazas públicas en medios y redes sociales, pero nuestro pueblo en resistencia está organizado y sabe que es materialmente imposible asestar un nuevo golpe de Estado.
Them fighting words, fam. She says it's materially impossible to have to enact a coup in Honduras right now. That's what she's saying. And she's not somebody that says things, I think, without thinking them through. Obviously, when we were there, they were thinking things through. They were deciding which direction they were going to go. We were a little bit like, I was a little bit like, you need to be more like Nicaragua. I didn't say that, but I was like, there needs to be that push. And they took their time, but they're going there, it seems. I mean, calling out the Washington lobby, calling out, saying that they are continuously attacked, and then naming all of these people that have been attacked by the West. And also, talking about this other thing that was not mentioned is that Honduras has requested entry to this BRICS-led development bank on the latest trip that they had to China. So they are obviously going in this direction.
Yeah. The climate right now in Honduras, I think what you said, those fighting words, I think they can back it up, because the sense I got over there, unlike some of the other countries we went there, when we talked to oppositional people, was in particular, in the sense of Honduras, it was like, no, they wanted that government. They all wanted that government out of there, no matter what. They wanted Juan Orlando Hernandez gone. They wanted him out of there. And that's what's going on right now. And I think that, when I talk about the dance that a lot of these Latin American countries have to perform with the United States, and the United States is also performing a dance, because they can't just coup a country right away, because there's a chance they might lose it. You know what I'm saying? They've lost Nicaragua. They've lost Venezuela. They've lost Cuba. If they try to do this in Honduras again, there'll be such an uprising that they'll lose it completely. there is a base with 1,500 troops. There's 4 bases in Honduras, I believe. One of them houses 1,500 troops. Well, regardless or not, the way they kind of cooed Manuel Zelaya, I don't think they can do that with Xiomara. I think she's 100% right that the citizens have had enough and they're ready to stand up and fight back no matter what. I also like the list of the people that she listed there too as well, because I know that Lula da Silva probably gets some of the most criticism from the West, especially from conservatives because of his stances on vaccine. But a lot of people don't realize that they threw him in jail too unjustly, and that he was in prison and he was jailed too as well for getting a little bit too leapy and jumpy because they didn't want him coming back into power. So I'm glad she listed out all those people. Evo went through the situation. Morales at one point, well, it was, not Morales. Correa at one point was, they tried to, at one point they tried to coup him and it looked like they were going to fail. So they pulled back immediately, almost like what they did with Chavez, right? You know what I'm saying? Like when they, at one point, they were ready to grab him and they were like, the people were going to overturn us. So I like the fact that she laid it all out. And I do believe them fighting words you talked about, she can back it up right now. People from Honduras have had enough of a United States Western-backed government. They're not going to just sit back in this case right now, so they better be careful.
And fam, the last thing I wanted to point out here is that Xiomara took the time to say that it's time to stand in solidarity and make a rigorous and vehement call for the freedom of Julian Assange. We can't get anybody in our government right now in the United States, and definitely no president, not even Bernie Sanders. Remember when he was asked, we can't get any of these people to say, you have to free Julian Assange. I think RFK did say something along the lines of freeing Julian Assange, that would be one of the things he would do. He's running for the candidacy. He's not somebody that's in power, though. Cornel West has said it. I think those are the only 2 people running. I think Marianne Williamson might have said it, but it's all of these people that are running, not anybody in power. We can't get any of these people to say free Julian Assange, but Mexico has said it. Brazil's Lula has said it. Honduras has said it. Nicaragua. I could go on. Maduro has certainly talked about Julian Assange. I don't understand. So you're telling me that these countries that we call, shithole countries, right? By the words of some people, these countries that have all of these issues. And, of course, we can't ignore the reasons why people are immigrating from these countries is clearly because of our interference and the disasters that we've caused on their economy. We've caused so much crime, and all of that they're still dealing with it. And not everybody can deal with it. So they come into the United States. So when people talk about these countries, but somehow they manage to have a population that understands their government, is able to tell me exactly how their election process is able to name these government officials, and is able to say, hey, we need to free Julian Assange. We can't even get that in the United States. It's just crazy to me that it takes somebody in a country that has suffered from a coup and an occupation by the United States to say free Julian Assange, but we can't do that here in the United States or there in the United States.
RFK said he'd free Julian Assange on day one. Dr. West went even better, said he'd free Julian Assange on day one, but also Mumia. He talked about Leonard Peltier. He talked about other prisoners too as well. I think there is a group of people, Marianne has been there too as well, that have talked about these things. So I'm very happy where those candidates are when it comes to Julian Assange. But I'm even getting more enlightened by the fact that a lot of Latin American leaders are even realizing how important is and what he did to expose the empire for their sins. Fam, I can see Xiomara has a little cup of espresso there. It looks like an agua sin gas or con gas. I'm not sure, but what is that there? Is that like some grapefruit juice or something, fam? What does she got on that table?
I have no idea, fam. Just because I can speak the language doesn't mean I can see what she's drinking.
It looks like a grapefruit juice. All right, let's play the video.
Hoy, en este espacio, en el que están representados los valores y principios que sustentan la humanidad, como fieles defensores de un mundo con libertad y sin censura, un principio sagrado que todos debemos honrar. Es tiempo de ser solidarios y hacer un llamado riguroso y vehemente por la libertad del Julian Assange. De nuestra parte, estamos listas para cumplir con esta gran misión.
Isn't that crazy?
I missed a lot of that because my internet was going in and out. It sucks, but I heard her, you know.
Yeah,
somewhat.
she said we need to stand in solidarity and free Julian Assange as defenders of freedom and standing against censorship. So, I mean, I think it's important that more, presidents and leaders keep calling this out. And, again, for a lot of the liberals that say, women and this and that, Xiomara, first female president of the United States, but she's actually, stands for something, right? Her policies are what people voted for. And this is a country, of course, that is far more conservative in certain aspects when it comes to that dynamic than even the United States. So just goes to show you if the candidate has the right qualities, people will, and then you have a fair election, people will actually, vote for the candidate rather than any sort of, vapid identity politics only with nothing to stand behind it. So, and that's that section, fam. We did spend a good amount of time, but we did go, and we want to thank all of you for taking us to helping us go to Nicaragua. It was a small fortune for me to go coming from Russia, and I was only there for a few days and literally just made it back Saturday very late, and no problems on the US side, but did get a little bit held up on the Russian side because I get it from both sides, because as an American, I'm suspect to either side, and I understand it was just like a 30-minute like, hey, let me look at your passport a little longer sort of situation. But things have been ramping up in Russia, and this is precisely why there's been an attack on a journalist. There's been obviously the attack on the Crimean Bridge, an attack on journalists and a murder of journalists. We're going to talk about that in the next section. And then there was also, of course, this morning, the drone attacks on another building in Moscow yet again. This is coming, of course, from Ukraine. So that's exactly why Russia is really ramping up their security. And of course, I get it. With an American passport, I'm going to be, threatened, but I'm not threatened, but investigated more. I don't feel threatened, is what I was going to say, by Russia, because I've never felt like they think they have attacked me in any way. But when it comes to the United States, I have seen people like Julian Assange, obviously in prison. I have seen people like Mumia. We've seen other journalists attacked, censored, imprisoned, labeled, maligned. We're seeing the attacks. So that's what I got to go off. I don't have that same concern when it comes to Russia. And I see it every day with the people that work for RT and aren't this pro-Russian enigma that people think they are. So
I'm glad that you didn't get messed with that much. Going back to the United States, I did not, fam. I went through. The guy asked me, did you bring back any alcohol or tobacco? And I told him no. And I moved right on. So let's read a super chat.